Dr. G. That's what my students in my first class I taught after I got my PhD. I was in the Afro department at Harvard, which had just been set up, and the students there gave me that name. They said, we can't call you Dr. Smitherman. That's too stuffy.
Hi, welcome to the Vocal Fries podcast about linguistic discrimination.
I'm Megan Figueroa.
And I'm Carrie Gillen. So today I thought we would talk about Quebec.
Yes, tell me. We've talked about Quebec before.
Yes, we have. Quebec nationalist François Legault wants the Canadian province of Quebec to welcome economic immigrants who can speak French in the future.
Economic immigrants. So basically people looking for jobs?
Yeah, so basically not the refugees, people who are migrating to Canada under sort of, and not family reunification either, right? So just people who are moving for work purposes.
So solo individuals.
Not necessarily. It could be a whole family. It's just that you're not reunifying, right? You're
Interesting.
not,
Okay.
There's no person here who can, what's the word? I can't remember, but there's like there's a family category, right?
Okay.
And that would be still fine, like stay the same. So it's just the people moving for economic reasons.
Okay. I mean, that's a lot of what happens here and has been happening here before we had, like, in the 90s and early 2000s, I think, about, like, in the Southwest, but...
Yeah, you have the same basic categories. You have refugees and asylees. You have, like, family reunification, and then you have the economic. You have all of them.
I've just never heard economic immigration. I don't know why. Probably because we have such gross rhetoric and such surrounding it here.
Probably. Yeah.
Okay, go on. Okay, so if they speak French, they're in. That's what he's saying.
He's saying, basically, yeah, you have. It's just another hoop you have to jump through to be accepted in Quebec. So basically, yeah, so he wants to have only Francophone economic immigrants by 2026. It's just
That's
coming
very
up fast.
soon. Wow.
He said in his previous run as premier, 80% of the economic immigrants spoke French, and before that it was 40 to 50%.
Premier, is that like the governor?
Yeah, I guess, yes. It's basically somewhat equivalent to a governor. It's not the same because the premier and the prime minister in a parliamentary system have to be the leader of their own party in order to also be the leader of the province or the
That's
country.
Right.
But functionally, it's just the closest equivalent to a governor, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so he has had, like, a very powerful leadership role before. But he's not in power right now in any way.
No, he is.
Oh, he is?
He's the premier.
Okay, current. Okay. And he's saying since the time that he's been there, it's been 80% Francophiles.
Francophones. Francophile means you love French.
That's right. It's true. Anyway, yeah, Francophones. Okay. Anyway, 80% of the economic immigrants have been Francophones, but that's just been a coincidence because it's not law or required yet.
I don't know if it's coincidence. You have a fair amount of power if you're in a leadership role, right? If you're the premier, you can kind of have your will trickle down through the bureaucratic ranks, right?
Yes, yeah, you're right. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he can't force it probably 100% until he passes a law. I don't know, like, in terms of Canadian law, if that's going to be deemed legal or not. So that actually reminds me of something that's going on. It hit BC pretty badly. That Canada basically ran out of all children's Tylenol products because RSV hit us and the flu
Sure. Yeah.
hit us really, really hard. It's starting to hit the US right now, but it hit us earlier. Anyway, so ran out of all these products, and so in order to import them, you can't just import them because there's no French often on the packaging. So they had to figure out a way to like print off special French inserts or something. Yeah.
Okay, so in Quebec, you have to have signs in both French and English, and even the products.
In Canada, all products have to have both. Oh. Be both in French and English, yeah.
But not all signs in all provinces.
No.
Okay.
The signs are, I mean, probably New Brunswick because it's actually functionally a bilingual province.
Uh-huh.
But certainly in Quebec, there are very strict language laws about like how big the signs can be in English versus French or other languages. French always has to be the biggest.
I mean, every time we talk about Quebec, I'm just gobsmacked by this because we have such English supremacy here because of power. But just the idea of like a bilingual, trilingual, whatever, multilingual place is, I guess, it's just like so foreign to me.
Right, but to be fair, Quebec is actually trying to be much more monolingual.
That's right. But toward French, yes. That's a lot. We did an intro where we were talking about that.
Yeah, so this is all part of that. This is where the Quebec Premier is doing, like every few months there's a new language law proposed and or passed, making laws yet more draconian.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, this guy wants to do it in like a short amount of time. Like doing all this, changing these things, the time that he wants to do it by. I mean, that's going to affect people that are already living there, no?
Not really. I mean, you're already there, and the rules are already quite strict, right? Like, remember how we talked about within 6 months you had to start switching all your services into French?
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, so it's not going to affect them. They're already under that.
Okay, they're not going to be like kicked out.
No,
these economic immigrants won't be.
No, unless they commit crime or something. No.
Okay, yeah, but not because of the language thing. But they're probably already.
No, once you're here, it's pretty hard to get kicked out.
Mm-hmm. So does he refuse to speak English? I'm just wondering about him. Like,
that is a good question.
I'm just trying to imagine this man, and this is what I'm imagining.
My guess is he does because he kind of has to.
Uh-huh.
But he might not. There's a small chance that he doesn't. Okay, he refused to participate in the English language debate before the previous election. So he just got reelected, basically.
Wow. And voters, I guess you're not there, but I just wonder if people in Quebec are like, respect that decision.
For sure. Like,
okay.
I mean, obviously not everybody there, but there will definitely be a pretty solid base that would respect that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, to be fair, Quebec is a French-speaking province.
Sure,
It's not strictly speaking bilingual, even though Montreal is bilingual.
Sure.
So there actually are some like pockets of small towns that are English. But, by legislation, it is a French province, so it kind of makes sense that he would do that. There's no way that there would be a French debate here in BC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's completely English.
Well, that doesn't make sense, right?
But if you have any federal aspirations, then you'd better learn French if you're an English speaker.
Wait, but how good is Justin Trudeau's French?
I mean, his dad was Quebecois.
Oh.
He's a French speaker too. Like, I think he's actually
grew up speaking French both.
Yeah. I think he's actually probably a really balanced bilingual.
Yeah. I've never heard him speak French, now that I think about it. As if I would know.
Yeah,
anything.
You would definitely know. You wouldn't be able to tell necessarily.
No,
I'm not sure even I can tell, but I can tell that he speaks like
French.
He doesn't sound like an Anglophone speaking French. I can tell you that.
Okay.
I know what that sounds like.
Right.
Because that's me. But yeah, so I think part of this is that he just won the provincial election, and now he's like, all right, last time it was 80%, this time 100%.
Yeah. He's like, here's my first 100-day agenda or whatever. Or like,
yeah.
Okay, so we'll probably see some more stuff coming out of Quebec soon about language.
It's just constant. There's a constant stream of language news out of Quebec.
Wow. If anyone ever thought that language wasn't important for some reason. I mean, it is everywhere.
It's extremely important.
Yeah.
And every community looks at it slightly differently and has different concerns. But...
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. We have such a good episode.
We do. I know. We get to talk to someone who's involved in the Black Power movement.
And she was I loved chatting with her so much. I could have gone on forever.
Yes.
And I felt so good after our conversation.
Yeah. Yes, it was a really uplifting conversation.
It was. We hope you enjoy listening to this conversation that was very fun and uplifting to have.
Yes, enjoy. Here's another podcast we think you'll love.
It's called Subtitle, and it tells stories about languages and the people who speak them.
Which is kind of like us.
Yes.
If you've ever wondered about she, he, they pronouns in Swedish or Japanese, or why some people seem to be so good at picking up languages, then Subtitle is a podcast for you.
I've actually wondered about both of those things.
Me too.
One recent episode profiles a woman who forgot her mother tongue and then set out to rediscover it. Another is about words that seem programmed to make us laugh. Another is about our very first and very last words. What was your first word, Carrie? What'd your mom or dad tell you?
I don't remember. I remember the first question I asked when we got to the cabin, which had no electricity. I was like, "Where's the TV?" So that clearly tells you something about me. But I don't remember what my first words were. Do you know yours?
Button.
I don't know why I find that so cute, but I really do.
Yeah. Because I was very curious about buttons, apparently.
Anyway, Subtitle is produced in association with the Linguistic Society of America and is hosted by award-winning journalists Patrick Cox and Kavita Pillay. Listen at Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to this. They also have some episodes on why some people still speak Latin.
Communicating with extraterrestrial beings.
Linguists who solve crimes, sign me up.
I know. Is the polyglot brain different?
And did Hurricane Katrina kill the New Orleans accent? Which, is related to did millennials kill the Philly accent?
Exactly.
So that we have.
Yes.
So if you like our podcast, you're almost certain to like Subtitle. So go check it out. Dr. Geneva Smitherman is a University Distinguished Professor Emerita of English and co-founder of the African American and African Studies doctoral program at Michigan State University. Smitherman co-founded the first public African-centered elementary school in the country, Malcolm X Academy, within the Detroit Public Schools. She is also known as Dr. G, or Dr. Smitherman, and the Queen of Black Language. She's the author of My Soul Will Look Back in Wonder, narrative essays about her race, gender, class, and linguistic consciousness as a member of the Black Power generation of the 1960s and 1970s. So welcome, Dr. G.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
We're so excited to have you. I'm so excited to meet you. I really have to say that your writing is beautiful.
It really is.
Knocks me off my feet.
I pride myself on my craft and writing. Thank you.
Oh, good. You should. You should.
You really should be proud.
Yeah.
Because, most academics are not that good writers.
Tell me about it.
Yeah.
The first question we have is, why did you want to write this book?
Well, I guess one of the things that motivated me is wherever I would go and give talks in the community or in different campuses, people would always ask me, where are you from? How did you get this thinking? Because at the time, I would have to say that the field of composition and rhetoric, which is an allied field of linguistics, was very conservative. I mean, they were teaching the King's English, and I mean King. They wouldn't even say Queen's English. And they wanted all the students, and Latinate grammar. That's the kind of grammar they taught, when linguistics became an enlightened field, people recognized that grammar didn't fit English. But that's what they were teaching in the late 50s and 60s. And so I remember, this is kind of a long way around to answer your question, but I remember at a community meeting in Metro Detroit, they invited me there to talk about language and the proposals that the Detroit Public Schools was coming up with. And in that community meeting, I did what I thought was the correct thing that I was being trained to do at this prestigious white University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, where I was the only Black student in the damn graduate class. I presented the thinking about what language is and what African-American language, how it fits the model, and so on. And everyone was listening attentively to me. And then this one elder, I never will forget it, because I was like really young when I went to graduate school in my early 20s. And this one elder stood up and said, if Black English, because they were still using the term Black English then, if Black English is so good, Miss Smitherman, why are you talking to us in non-Black English? Like, I was using academic, standardized white English. I never had thought of it until she posed that question. If it's so good, why are you not using that language? So from that point on, I went home and remixed that paper with Hakeem Anamuni's Don't Cry Scream Poetics in that time, which was all in Black language on the printed page. And I started writing academic articles for publication using a mixture of the standardized white English and Black community language. I was the first person to do that in the field, actually. My first publication in 1970, I believe. English teacher, why you be doing the things you don't do, was my title. And so since that moment, everywhere I would go, people would say, what gave you the idea? What made you start trying to write in the language? And I said, well, the community people, the community that raised me and gave me birth. Yes, that was an attack. I'm thinking I'm being all cool and down. I'm with the movement, and I'm talking this standard English that I'm learning up here in this elite, top 10 university. I thought it was doing the right thing. This old sister said, well, no, this Black language so good. How come you ain't using none of it? We heard you say nothing out of your mouth that's Black English. And I was devastated. So the community taught me how to relate, how to devise a way of communicating complex material, which they needed to know to make appropriate policy decisions about how to educate their kids. They taught me how to do that. And I started practicing. I would get in front of the mirror and just practice by myself and watch myself. And then I had my little Sunday school kids. I would practice Sunday school lessons on them. And so eventually, long story short, that's how I came to develop my style. And that's one of the things within the field of linguistics and Black studies that I became known for.
That was one of my favorite parts of your book, actually, was that story. And I was really hoping that you would talk about it because, I think I've seen those kind of call outs. So I work for the Squamish Nation, so First Nations here in British Columbia. And I see those kinds of call outs in that community as well. Mm-hmm. And so I really appreciated that story.
Okay.
So one of the things I also wanted to ask you about was the term womanist, because I think that a lot of people don't know what that means. And so why do you call yourself a womanist, and what does it mean?
Well, I learned that term and borrowed it from my sister Alice Walker, whom you may remember as the Pulitzer Prize winner of the novel The Color Purple, which Oprah Winfrey turned into a movie and so on. And way back, this would have been in the 60s, way back then, Alice Walker in her community talks and writings when began to talk about womanist liberation and womanist democracy. And to my knowledge, the historians can crucify me on this if they want to, but she was the first person to use that term. In fact, she is credited with having coined the term womanist. And what did she mean by that? She said that if Black liberation is going to mean anything to our people, it has to involve everyone. We can't just, she said, and in particular, there was a lot of chauvinism, male chauvinism, and what do y'all call it today? Masculinist talk and activity going on about whether sisters could be leaders and who should be leading the struggle and so on. And her position was that we need everybody in the struggle. We can't just have Black men. We need to be concerned about everybody. That isn't just young Black men and Black women, but what about the elders, the older people? And what about the young kids and the teenagers? So her definition is that a womanist is a person, male or female, or even now, what do y'all call it, a GQ or whatever. I mean, gender is not relevant. But in those days, we didn't have the two genders, quote unquote, because we didn't know no better. And she said, we can't just talk about Black men, no, even just Black men and women. We have to talk about the whole community. Older people, young kids starting kindergarten, high school kids. How do we bring everybody concern and need into the struggle? And if you are a womanist, that should be your position. You are for everybody in the Black community, regardless of age, or today we would say gender, education, regardless. You got to be concerned about the whole Black community. And I said, yeah, that's right. And I started calling myself womanist after she developed that term.
Linguistics is terribly disconnected from the subfields of linguistics are terribly disconnected from each other, and how it's not like this holistic community thing. Do you feel the same way?
I had felt that way, yes. For example, in the 60s, linguistics is almost totally connected with education. And education was a discipline that was one of my majors, because my calling is teaching, and I wanted to be a teacher. And I thought that was really important. But there's hope, because as older generations kind of fade away or die off, I mean, God, I'm not wishing nobody dead now. Help me, Jesus. I ain't wishing nobody. But seriously, but as older generations give way to newer thought of younger generations and younger thought, linguistics, it has become much more disciplinarily connected to fields that depend on language, like education, much more connected to anthropology or sociolinguistics now. So it's getting better. In fact, I don't know if you all know about this new project from Oxford University Press. There's a new research effort, partnership between Oxford University Press and the Hutchins Center at Harvard, which is established and run by Dr. Henry Louis Gates, or SCIP as known. And that OUP and the Harvard Center, they came up with a project on the lexicon of African American English. They're going to do a dictionary, Oxford Dictionary of African American English. That's going to come out. It's a 3-year project, and they had big funding for it from Harvard, from the Oxford University Press people, from several foundations, and with their look with what the project is trying to aims to do. They're just trying to, they sincerely is to document the development of the lexicon semantics, the lexicon and vocabulary, if you will, of African American language. When was a certain word first used? What did it mean? And who used it in the Black community? And where has it been used in the mainstream white and other communities? And that's all going to be in the dictionary. And that's, I mean, you would never have had these high elite academics and presses of that sort and centers cooperating and thinking on that basic level about, because they're talking about words, vocabulary, like 24/7, and words that come into the American mainstream from Black usage, from Black music, or now from hip hop. You would never have had that kind of connection of academic pursuit and mainstream everyday pursuit for everyday people. So things have changed and are changing, and I'm very optimistic about that.
Your book, Word from the Mother, was actually reissued this year as well. My Soul Looks Back in Wonder is coming out anew. But in both books, you talk about the spiritual. You write that hip-hop linguistics brings new life into old verbal forms. How has the role of the Black church interacted with hip-hop and the Black language tradition?
Well, the one thing that comes to mind immediately is the fact that many of the verbal traditions and expressions that are now in Black popular culture, including hip hop, and in my time, the Motown sound and so on, a lot of those traditions and expressions, verbal expressions, came out of the Black church. A lot of people don't know that, but that Du Bois first wrote about that way back in the 1890s, and all of his work on the Black church. That's who I learned it from his writings. And I think it's because the Black church is probably the most critical cultural institution historically in the Black community. Because at one point in time, you go back to pre-Civil War and even post-Reconstruction. We have the Black church. We didn't have musical entities and anything like what we had now. The culture that we had and that we could manifest and embrace without restraint or constraint in the Black church. And subsequently, many of the verbal traditions and cultural power came out of the Black church. And when it got out of the church, it was, of course, secularized, but it came out of the church. Like, for instance, in the Black church, it's common for there to be communication of sorts between whoever is speaking, like the minister or deacon or whoever is speaking, even if it's just ordinary bench warmers, we call them. It's common to have communication directly in the wide open between that individual and the church. And so, when you see movies and you see scenes in the Black church, you see the preacher will say something, and somebody say, that's right, yep, that's right, speak on it, amen, pastor. So that back and forth of the call and the response is that in the Black church. Well, that transition into early jazz, so you have the jazz newness, and somebody over there with the band when we found out, like James Brown, when he said, let's get a drummer some. And so the musician in the jazz tradition and later in the Motown tradition, that carried on. You know how there'll be a call from whoever is performing. They'll say, wave your hands in the air like you just don't care. That came out of the church. That's a common form of this communication of back and forth between the speaker and the congregation. The preacher or whoever is speaking will say something and people are just wave their hand. That's really like saying, go ahead. That's right, all right. So I think that's how you see the power of the culture and the style of the church coming out of into the secular everyday world.
Okay, so one of the things that you talk about in your book is being sent to speech correction therapy. And could you just explain why you were sent and, what effect that had on you?
Well, in the 50s, this is in the 1950s, if you wanted to go into teaching and get a teaching certificate, you had to pass a speech test. And this was true in almost all the states, not just Michigan. So part of the main thing of the speech test was the person had to use the applicant had to use the traditional standardized, maybe I said Latinate grammar and pronunciation. And if you didn't do that, you failed the speech test. So, of course, people speaking Black English like me back in the 50s and Latinx with accents and working class whites from like Appalachia, Southern Appalachia in the South, or in urban white working classes communities in the North. None of them, those groups, spoke the standard textbook, not the whole groups, I mean many people in those groups did not speak the standard textbook grammar based on the grammar of Latin. So if you fail that, you have to take not speech test, then you have to take speech correction. And I remember the first day, and you had to pay for it, by the way. So I remember in the speech correction class, and I had a real attitude too, just like a lot of people in there did, because I had come out of high school with a college prep high school, which is basically at that time almost all white, with the 3.5. And I had maintained a 3.5 on a 4-point scale my first freshman year Wayne State. And not only that, I was trusted by the elders in that church who, when my father founded our church in our living room in the Detroit East Side ghetto, they voted me to be the church assistant secretary just because I said hi instead of hi, or what was another one of mine? Oh, fo instead of for, those kind of sounds which I have to take speech correction and pay for it. And I guess sort of psychological saving grace from that class, when I went in there, I expected to see a lot of other Negro students, because in the 50s, you were still saying Negro. But I didn't expect to see Hispanic. And I thought, I said, wait a minute. And I definitely didn't expect to see white people. I said, what the white folk doing in here? These were the Appalachian and Southern and working class whites. We're all in there. And the speech therapist tested us for like dysphagia, dyslexia, stuttering. We didn't even have nobody who stuttered. She could nothing. But when she is a speech therapist, clinician trained to deal with real biological speech disorder, she could find nothing wrong. And so she said, well, and by the way, she was a grad student trying to get her little PhD. They give all that kind of stuff to the grad students to do. And she somehow figured out, wait a minute, I gotta do this. So let me figure out how to do it. She taught us the test. I'll never forget that. Every day we practiced all those speech sounds that were on the test. They would give you like a list of words you had to pronounce. And then they would give, you had to do a extemporaneous biographical account of your life in 3 minutes. And she said, now, y'all memorize the extemporaneous. Just memorize it. Say something. Don't do that extemporaneous. Memorize. And then we'll forget it. Everybody in the class at the end of the semester passed the speech test. And she was, think about that, 1956, 57.
So you also talk about the deficit model of Black talk. Yeah, so why is the deficit model so harmful?
Well, I think number one, it's inaccurate model of the speech language process, which is no different for Black speakers than for any other group. I mean, speech language is a basic biological phenomenon in the human species. And so everybody's got speech language capabilities and possibilities. It's just a biological and nothing to do with race. And so those kids are being misserved because it's similar to what we just said about the kids being still having to take communication disorder or being classified as communication disorder. They're being.
One of the last things I wanted to talk about with you is your experience as an expert witness, because I thought that was very interesting too.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever ones you want to talk about, the floor is yours.
This is my first expert witness at a court case. And in fact, my first of any kind, because by now I've done lots of them. And it was in 1969, and there was a meeting at a church, a very popular Black Baptist church in Detroit, whose pastor was Aretha Franklin's father, Franklin. And he had given, Reverend Franklin was very receptive to the movement that was starting to slowly form, which later we would call Black Power. But he was the head of many other Black church ministers in terms of his progressive thinking and knowing that it's time for a change. So he supported a lot of Black causes. And he had allowed the Republic of New Africa, an national organization, to have a meeting in his church, their annual convention. And the Detroit police, I don't even know how they knew about it. It was secret, but I mean, I don't know what brought them to the church, but they came to Reverend Franklin's church and disrupted the whole meeting. And ran in the church. And some of the members of that Republic of New Africa confronted the police. And one police officer, all white cops then, we're talking about 1969. I think one was injured and maybe one might have been killed. So then the whole force came and invaded the church. They arrested everybody in there, men, women, and children, like 200-300 people. And of course, they didn't have jail space for that many people. I mean, so they put them in the bathhouse of the beach area of Belle Isle, this island park that's really one of Detroit's crown jewels. It's right up there in the Detroit River, in between Windsor, Canada on the one side, and then Lower East Side Detroit on the other part. You put them in the police locked them all up, men, women, and children, and put them in this bathhouse. And so this was now about 10 or 11 o'clock at night. Someone called Judge Crockett, and they had to arraign him or else cut him loose. I mean, they had to do stuff. So at midnight, I never will forget this, Judge Crockett held court in the bathhouse of the beach area of Belle Isle, and released all the women and children. So in that court case, what developed was that the police accused one of the members of the Republic of New Africa, named Al Hibbett. They accused him of the murder. They had no witnesses, no proof, no nothing. And they arrested him. And at that point, one of our young, brilliant lawyers who died way too young, Kenneth Cockrell, he was called to provide bail or arrange for bail, provide for, the legal proceedings for Hibbett. And the judge, Maher, judge set his bail for $50,000.
At that time.
At that time, $50,000 in 1969 was the equivalent of $361,935 in 2020, $21. And Hibbett, I mean, he was a working man. He just worked for this community organization, Republic of New Africa. Hibbett worked as just an ordinary layperson. And I think his salary, okay, here we go. The bail was $50,000. His salary for the year was $8,670. So, and they wouldn't allow us, Cockrell's law firm he was in a law firm with both black and white lawyers who were very left-leaning. In fact, Cochran is about Marxist limits publicly. I mean, he about and 2 or 3 of his law partners. So they wouldn't allow them to call any witnesses when they had the arraignment. Prohibit. They wouldn't allow Cochran and his partners to call any witnesses for him. And they reconfirmed the bail and locked him back up. So that evening at the community meeting outdoors in the Kennedy Square Park in downtown Detroit, each day the Cochran legal team would go there and report the day's events of the trial, on the hearing and then the trial. So at that meeting, Cochran, who is very outspoken, very African-centered. I mean, he took the offensive, and he, at that meeting, told the public what had happened, and announced about the ridiculous amount of the bail, and then referred to the judge. And I hadn't even forgotten this, so I wrote this book. And yet, he had a few choice words for the judge. He just, okay, to the community gathered there, he referred to the judge as a lawless racist, a rogue bandit, thief, pirate, hunky dog fool.
Honky dog fool.
Hunky dog fool.
That's amazing.
And he said, I can't explain it. I don't know what this. He said, this guy's nuts. This is my hard judge. And that's what he called him. So, well, you can't, in 1969, you couldn't do stuff like that. He wasn't in the courtroom. He was outside in the park talking to all the community gathered there. And when the judge saw on the 11 o'clock news that night what Cochran said about him, he judged Ken Cochran for contempt of court, even though he wasn't in the court. And then they had to start the trial of the lawyer for him. His little world was put aside for a minute, and they had to start Cochran's trial on this contempt charges. And that didn't mind hitting man. He, like I said, he went on the offensive. He called in attorney Howard Moore, who had defended Martin Luther King and Angela Davis, and all kind of national attorneys, white and black. That's when he called in me. I was finishing my PhD at Michigan, my dissertation. He called me in to be a language expert about how his language was appropriate for the time, place that he and people that he was, which was true. And I called in, with Kenny's help, a linguist from MIT, O'Neill. And so the two of us helped him put together, helped Kenny's legal team put together that he was speaking the language of the people he was talking to. He was practicing good sociolinguistic communication theory, adapting the message to the audience. And let me tell you, when the hearing for Cochran was set that next week on Monday, the courtroom was packed, and Cochran's legal team got up and presented their opening arguments and quoted the famous Wayne O'Neill linguist from MIT, and hopefully one day to be famous linguist Geneva Smitherman from the University of Michigan, almost a PhD. That was the end of it. When all that high power legal and expert witness that was the end of it. My heart didn't. So that was that. It was dismissed. They had to dismiss the contempt charge against Cockrell and proceed with the legal trial of Mr. Hibbett. But that was my first involvement as an expert witness and one of my most exciting ever.
Oh,
Yeah.
I bet.
That's one of my favorite stories out of all the. I must have been in with 30, 40 cases by now as expert witness, but that's my favorite.
Yeah, well, it's a good one.
Is good. Although I wonder, I mean, I just really want to reiterate to our listeners, your writing is beautiful. And you do not have to be, I don't care who you are, you will like these books.
Yeah.
They're fascinating. They're so well written.
And they're very approachable.
They're very approachable. And I say both books because, like I said, you did Word from the Mother was reissued this year as well.
They call it a classic, niche classic.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, no. So Word from the Mother and My Soul, Look Back and Wonder, both I cannot recommend them more.
Thank you.
All of your writing. I'm still in this, I guess, in the fight to, overturn deficit models of Black language, of Latinx language. Do you have any advice for me as I move forward?
You need some allies in different communities and on different public policy levels. Like if you can get somebody who works with or is a state senator or a state congressman, that'll help. Actually, that's the one thing. And in addition to your legal allies in your field, you need some legislative policy making kind of allies at that level. And then community organizations line up with community organizations. They're civic community, like in the Black community, the fraternities and sororities are even involved, and you can even get them involved. So maybe there's some kind of social group, because they are, what's interesting to me is having now at that age and having come through life where people seem disconnected and didn't care. When I'm saying now in this late stage of my life, people are connected. I mean, they do care. I mean, now sometimes they like them Trump supporters, not that kind, but
yeah, we don't want them to connect.
No, yeah, but I mean, but it's widespread, this connecting of people. So that's encouraging to me. And so that what I would say, if you reach out to community groups, to legislators, or to people in the church community, whatever, any church community, I think you'll find some real help there.
Well, that's beautiful because I think it's like
Great
full
advice.
circle here. It's build community is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This has been really
Can
great.
I ask you guys a quick question about yourselves?
Sure.
How did you come up with this name for your project? I mean, I never heard of fight. I said fight with fries.
The vocal fries?
Vocal fries. So back when we started this podcast, people were still in the media talking about vocal fry a lot and how women are doing it too much and it's hurting their careers and blah, blah, blah. And vocal fry is creak, just, creak on our vowels.
Creak voice. Creaky voice.
Creaky voice. And, everyone uses it at least a little bit in English. Some people use it more than others. Men use it a lot and no one cares. We only care to notice it when women are using it. So that was why I thought we should have some kind of name related to vocal fry. And I was like, oh, vocal fries. And I actually asked my husband to create to create this logo.
I mean, look, we have the- Yeah, it's pretty cute, right?
It's because I was like,
Makes us
oh, we
little
should be fries.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
And I use Vocal Fry a lot.
Yes.
I'm of the generation that uses it a lot, and it's like, okay, we have finally, okay, podcasts aren't normally hosted by women. We are the minority in that, so we have 2 women hosting. So that added on too is, I really liked how that played out.
Okay, it's clever and definitely attention getting.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, that's great. Okay, thinking outside the box.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you
And
so much.
we leave our listeners with one final message on this show. Don't be
Don't
an
be an
asshole.
Wonderful.
Aw, thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Thank you, Dr. G.
Thank you. Yeah, y'all stay strong and keep on pushing.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
The Vocal Fries podcast is produced by me, Carrie Gillen, for Halftone Audio. Theme music by Nick Granum. You can find us on Tumblr, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Vocal Fries Pod. You can email us at vocalfriespod@gmail.com, and our website is vocalfriespod.com.